Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible? So, after a powerful, packed bunch of security leaders speaking on a variety of topics, I had to find out something that is not redundant in nature. So, I came up with something that would be probably interesting for people who are looking at cybersecurity from a angle outside of and problems. So, I'm talking about a topic called journey from ASM to RSM, wherein ASM is the industry's popular buzzword. It stands for attack surface management, and RSM is risk surface management. Before we begin that, my heartfelt thank you to NCSRC for having us here in front of this lovely audience. I only have 10 or 15 minutes, so in case I'm unable to complete my chain of thoughts, please feel free to meet us at a booth outside and we'll help start discussion from there as well. Thank you. Now, what exactly is cybersecurity? This room should not have a problem understanding that, right? But the bottom of the discussion, cybersecurity for any other business, like any other risk, is just another risk management function. A business, an enterprise has to go through a variety of risks. More risk is more business. So just like any other risk, this is another risk management function, cyber risk management function. So what is risk management? Risk 101 for people who are studious people. Risk means likelihood times impact. But the truth be told, it is really not about how often something breaks. It's about how expensive it is when something breaks. And from the history, you can see people with the best of money, people with the best of tooling, people with the best of people have been breached. So money did not save them. Best of talent did not save them. What went against them was them not being constantly looking for things that can take them down, right? And every time it has happened, impact has always won. Now, is it possible to have zero risk? If it was possible, all of us here would have been jobless by now. Before I move any further, I wanted to bring in more context to what I'm trying to tell you today. You guys all know about the Amazon Alexa, right? My son, he comes from school, goes to the living room, he shouts at Alexa, saying, Alexa, play this movie or this thing on living room TV. And everything works seamless. Alexa is from Amazon, the internet provider is Airtel, the TV is Samsung, the content is played on a YouTube app or Netflix. Nobody complained that, oh, this XML format is not acceptable to me. Oh, Alexa doesn't work with Samsung TVs. So this is the wonder of how consumer electronics solved it. But cybersecurity failed here in a very bad way. We never put the user at the epicenter of all this experience. Look at two banks today. Two banks are not fighting for their core banking awesomeness. They're not saying, I'm giving you 0.5% more savings interest than the others who come to us. They're fighting on the user experience again, right? What was the last time you changed your service provider because they got breached? If you did that, you would probably be changing providers every month. Everybody is breached. So you only change a service provider when you have an experience issue. Now, all boils down to how you look into your ROI of a cybersecurity investment. This is where risk plays. You are an enterprise. In order for you to do business, you will have exposure. If you do not have any exposure, you can't conduct business. But whether or not that exposure boils down to risk is more important. And if it boils down to risk, how much is at risk? Everybody has all these nice, cute-looking security cameras at home. You don't buy a 1 lakh rupee security camera and point it at a toy that is 10 rupees worth. So are you overspending in cyber? Are you underspending in cyber? There are stakeholders to cybersecurity ROI beyond your CISO, beyond your board. Are we able to convince every participant, maybe the CFO, that we did a really good job by buying that new two-factor authentication 3 months ago? Because for them, it doesn't make any sense. A new two-factor authentication system, did it reduce risk? If it did, how much? Quantify it for me, right? So that's where I'm bringing up this topic. You will never have zero risk. We must figure out what's most likely to cause me financial loss. Now, how can we reduce that likelihood? Of course, by doing a lot of things right. But so risk management is going to be entirely about how you can reduce the likelihood of a major financial loss to the business. That's all cyber risk is about. Now, how much does a business stand to lose? What is your value at risk? Like I told you, you are never going to make an investment of 1,000 rupees to protect something that's 10 rupees. So if you have something at risk, what's the value at risk? So your CEO, your board should define all this value at risk. Now, when I say value at risk, it can be in terms of many ways. What if it gets stolen? What if it gets a ransomware? What if there's an operational downtime? So depending on the nature of the business loss, you will have a value to that risk, right? So to quantify risk, all parts of business must come together and speak the same language. But unfortunately, what happens today is enterprises will have a minimum of 20 or 30 different security tooling. Every tool has its own language. This speaks the language of CVSS, this speaks the language of severity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This speaks a different language, that speaks red, yellow, orange. There's no unified metering model. If you were in London and you said this cake is 20 pounds, you'd be thinking 20 pound by weight or 20 pound by money. There's zero way to measure risk unless you have one unified metrics of that measurement. You know length is centimeters, kilometers, but if I told you define length, of course length in Bangalore means how much time will it take to reach there. So that's also definition, right? But the metrics must mean something in uniformity. Now, what is the language of risk? This room knows. So what do you think is the ultimate language of risk? The language of risk is money. Quantify the risk to a number. So that not just because it catches attention, because it then garners all the interest it really deserves. Now, the language of risk is money. VAR stands for value at risk. That informs the spend required to mitigate or transfer risk. You go to a doctor. Doctor tells you go and do a full body checkup. You come up with a report that has 15 different things, observations, right? You risk rank, prioritize them based on what has the ability to kill you tomorrow. You don't say, oh, I want to ignore these 15 things. First, I'll go and have a good haircut. You don't do that, right? You have to risk rank, prioritize what has the ability to kill you. Now, once you do that, you are attending to your risk in the best logical way. But the industry, cybersecurity industry that I'm unfortunately a part of, we speak the language of alerts, vulnerabilities, tickets, patches, which is never ending. So, and these mean nothing to business. Do you really think your CISO walks through the board and tells the board, we fixed 540,000 vulnerabilities last week? It matters to them nothing, right? So how do we start speaking the language of risk? We need to first look at business context. What am I protecting? What is it even worth? Right? If you're a bank or if you are a business, you should be able to break down your business by entities. Like this is my core banking infrastructure. This is my client banking. This is my loan banking. This is my UPI infrastructure. Break it down. If you're a company, break it down by entities. Assign a dollar value to these entities based on numerous loss types. Then look at the business context. Now, how do we start speaking the language of risk? Well, yeah. Now, before we speak the language of risk, the first thing is, what am I trying to protect in my infrastructure? Do I really have the visibility of all things that's on my environment, that's a part of me delivering a value by my business? Do I have a visibility to all assets? And today, an asset has a very complex meaning. Earlier, an asset was very easy to define, an IP address, a switch, a system, a server. But today, an asset is far more complex. An API is an asset, right? Container is an asset. AI element is an asset. An asset could mean something very different today. So you might have an inventory of all things, ultra accurate at all times, because if you do not know what you have, you definitely cannot have a protection plan. Now, do we know all the risk factors? Do we know all risk factors? Like, if I have an asset that has a vulnerability, and that vulnerability has a public exploit, and that asset on which this vulnerability lives is also storing thousands and thousands of PII data. All this intelligence means a lot more than saying this system has just this vulnerability and you should go and you must find time to go patch it. Do we know all the risk factors associated with an asset? Can we correlate them effectively to make sense? Can we layer our alerts and threat intel and contextualize them so that we're able to prioritize? Do I know what has the ability to cause the most financial loss and risk rank, stack rank, and prioritize them. Which is why I told you none of this matters if you do not respond or remediate to threat. Now, visibility of risk is not going to fix this risk. If I do not go to a gym, but I constantly 3 times a day I go measure my weight, nothing happens. Action is required. So once you have found out what's wrong, you must have an action plan to attend to it, right? So none of this matters if you do not have a remediation plan. Now, so this is the state of cyber risk management today. Thousands of tooling, dozens of cybersecurity tools, but no meaningful idea of risk. So if everything is critical, nothing is. You buy tool X tells you top 10. This tool, top 10. This tool, top 10. At the end of the day, the board is looking at top 300 again. Right? And none of them speak the same language. There's no unified measurement to understand what's the true risk here. So this is where you want to convert all of these indicators of exposure into meaningful risk, or else you would be playing a whack-a-mole approach. You've got the mall where children play this whack-a-mole game, right? Where the mouse comes out from some hole and then you're supposed to hit it. That means you're attending to a problem as it happens. Very reactive. Zero proactiveness. So this is where the idea of a ROC comes in. You guys, everybody in this room knows about a SOC, right? A Security Operations Center. This is where, now the SOC was of course born out of necessity to triage alerts. That means something after it has happened, you triage them, figure out what went wrong, why it went wrong, where it went wrong, and learn from it, or triage it and then work on a ticket. This is where the ROC comes in. You need a proactive way of risk management, which is now called a Risk Operations Center. Risk Operations Center is not another tool like a SOC. The SOC is not a tool. Risk Operations Center is a mechanism for you to do cybersecurity at scale, bringing out the risk element of it. What does it include? It includes being able to do unified asset inventory. Regardless of what the asset is, where the asset is, you must be able to look at it. All risk factors that associate with that asset, all threat intelligence that you have about this asset, all the business context that you have on the asset, all risk being prioritized in real time, and of course, response orchestration after you found a problem. And everybody's favorite topic, executive reporting and audit. So all of this makes a ROC. It doesn't mean it's one single tool. You might have dozens of tools, but they need to come in tandem, play a part in this risk management function to be able to deliver proactive risk operations. But of course, everything depends on the best detection. If the detection pillar is wrong, the entire ROC castle breaks. So the whole idea is to take you from understanding your exposure to attack surface to risk surface. This is what I have. This is my attack surface. This is what is attackable out of it. And this is the risk from that attack. So moving from attacks to attack surface to risk surface. This is the whole idea, whole notion behind Risk Operations Center. In the interest of time, I think I'm already out of time, but if you want to know more about this subject, please meet us at our booth. The whole idea was to make sure that instead of getting frazzled with millions of findings, hundreds of graphical, nice looking dashboard and doing dashboard tourism and getting stuck with scorecard mafias, do risk operations better. Yeah, so that's all my time, but if you need to know more about the Qualys ROC, please meet us at the booth. Thank you. I can probably entertain one or couple questions if any. Thank you.